The only reason why God gives you a life, puts resources at your disposal, is to do His will. You are going to use the resources that He puts at your disposal to advance His kingdom. That is the only reason why we are in this world. Anything out of that scope is vanity. It is not easy. In fact, it is very difficult to take the message of the cross seriously if you have not understood the vanities, temporary nature, and illusions that the world offers. What I mean is, before you reach that point where you say, I'm giving my life to God for real, and I'm going to allow Him to use me right now, and I'm going to die to myself and just wait upon Him, guide me into His holiness and into His will for my life, you must have, first of all, seen that the world is vanity. If you have not captured that revelation of the world being some form of temporary thing that is passing away, it is difficult to believe the message of the gospel. It is one thing to say, I believe in God, I believe in the gospel, I believe in the message of Jesus. And we know that the Bible tells us that even demons do believe that God exists. But it is another to walk with God, to allow God to truly lead us in this life and use us to accomplish His will. That is something not easy. You see, the world has so many things to offer. What the world tells us is that you need to be born, you go to school, after that you need to work towards a good career, be a successful human being according to the world's standard. This can mean different things to different people, which is not really bad. However, what God expects if we call ourselves children of God is that we humble ourselves at every point in time, right from childhood, that our parents guide us in the ways of the Lord. That is why the Bible says that seek ye the Lord while you are young. When we become teenagers, that we quickly embrace the ways of God, walk with Him, and ask Him what He wants to accomplish with our lives. But you see, this is where it becomes truly interesting, because when we are born into this world, we are born in various environments, and these environments inculcate us with certain values. Some of those values are just values that represent vanity. And so we are full of motivation, enthusiasm, optimism to make it in life in a manner that suits our own human perspectives. At that point, with that mindset, we are susceptible or vulnerable enough to be attacked by the devil and deviated from the true objective, which is seeking the Lord with all our hearts and seeking His will for our lives. And I can tell you from experience that many of us struggle in this line. I was looking at the children of Israel. How is it that they could see God perform all those great miracles? They saw God's power in action. They were able to see things beyond human explanation. But just few months after those things, they forgot about God and they began to do things that are contrary to God's will. And I was wondering why something like that would happen. And I translated that to my own life. I found myself, even though I had experienced God's power and I knew that God is real, coming back to the same sins over and over. The reason why that is happening is because we have aligned ourselves to the patterns of the world. We do not have a complete revelation of God's kingdom. And so you cannot have a complete revelation of God's kingdom when the world preoccupies you, when the world reveals itself to you as more real. But the moment you capture a revelation of heaven, the moment you realize that this world is just a temporary thing, there are streets of gold waiting for me, there is a life that is beyond what we can explain in this world coming very soon. And that world or that life is going to be forever and ever. You will come to that point where you see this world the way the Bible truly describes it. The Bible describes this current life that we are living as vapor. It also talks about it as grass that is cut and put in the oven. When you look at vapor, it appears just for a while, and after some time it disappears. When you look at grass, it's beautiful for some time. After a while, it fades away. The Bible also describes this life that we live at the moment as a flower that fades. When it brings out its beauty, it looks captivating, but that is just for a temporary period of time, and it's going to fade away. And that is how our life, this current life that we live right now is. And so we have all these things that we have buried in our minds that we want to achieve in this world. All sorts of things that we want to pursue in this world. We want to become successful. The only problem is when these things are not in line with God's will, they truly become vapor or a flower or grass that is cut and put in the oven. Unfortunately, those things that we pursue end up adding no value to our lives. And because we set up our minds to pursuing these things, it is also difficult to truly accept the message of the cross, to allow that message of the cross to settle down in our hearts. Buried in our hearts are all these worldly projects that we want to accomplish. To accept the message of the cross, walk in line with God's will, we must come to the point where we understand that this world is just a temporary place, that most of the things we see on earth are vanities. Only what is done in accordance with God's will is going to be meaningful on that day when we appear before the judgment seat of Christ. Another thing that I want to say is it takes time to understand these things. Very few people have the grace to just embrace the message of the cross and get a full revelation, walk in line with God's will. There are not many people on earth like that. Most people go through this stage, they pursue things that are irrelevant. And then at some point in life, they come to realize that most of the things that they did in the past were not in line with God's will. And that the point has come when they truly need to go after what is relevant. And that is why if we have believed in the message of the cross, if we have understood the message of the gospel, if that message has settled down in our hearts, we have to be patient with unbelievers. Pray for them and seek all sorts of strategies to reach them with the gospel of Jesus. Recently, I was in an environment where many people talk about Jesus. Many people talk about the gospel. They call the name of God. But when I look at the lifestyle, when I look at the results in the field, these results are very far away from what God would expect of his children. And what the prophet was talking about came to mind, that these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far away from me. And that's what I'm talking about. When we are captivated by the world, when we are captured by the things of this world, by the materialism, individual achievements, when we are caught up in that trap, we do not easily see that we just have barely 80, 90, 100 years to live in this world, if you live long. And that the time is coming when this life will be taken away from you, and you're going to stand before someone who truly owns that life. And so when the world occupies you like that, you can't really see that. And that is why I say it is so difficult to believe in the message of Jesus Christ if you have not understood the temporary nature of the world, the temporary nature of the pursuits of this life. Some of the things we go after are completely irrelevant. And so for you watching me right now, I do not know your position. I don't know where you find yourself. Maybe you have truly believed in the message of the cross. You have buried it in your heart and you're seeking God's will and going after His will. But you could be one of those who call the name of God, but you have your own desires, you have your own ideas, and you do things your way. But you could also just be an unbeliever. I'm just here to point out to you that this world is vanity. Everything you see in this world is reserved for destruction. There is something better that God has prepared for us. The only reason why God gives you a life, puts resources at your disposal, is to do His will. You are going to use the resources that He puts at your disposal to advance His kingdom. That is the only reason why we are in this world. Anything out of that scope is vanity. It will not stand the test of time. And of course, as you are listening to this message right now, a lot of things are going on in your heart and you're asking yourself all sorts of questions. At the end of the day, you will have to take a decision to follow God. If you do not take it, if you do not take that step forward, if you do not decide, the world will own you until the end. And it is my prayer that you will not be one of those the world controls. And I truly understand that for each and every one of us, this is not an easy battle. It's a tough one. But we must trust God to be victorious. God bless you.